Welcome everybody to our second of the spring series of Beyond the Web, and we are so grateful to be joined today by none other than Bruce Schneier, who does not need an introduction, but nonetheless will give a brief one for him. But just a reminder that this series has been going on for about 2 years, and a lot of the recordings are online on the Ostrom website. And so again, I welcome you all. Thank you on behalf of the Ostrom Workshop and the Hamilton Luger School for being here, all of you online. There'll be plenty of opportunity for questions. Feel free also to write in the chat box as your questions emerge. Bruce has said that he is absolutely undistractable, so right away as he's talking. But I'm going to give it over to Doc, and then Doc will introduce Bruce.
Thanks. A little round of clapping here. I've known Bruce for a while now, and we're colleagues at the Berkeley Klein Center at Harvard, where he is also a lecturer on public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. He's on the board of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and a bunch of other organizations that do good. He's also one killer writer who comes up with really great titles for books, like Liars and Outliers, and what's something about Steal This Book or something like that?
It's called Click Here to Kill Everybody.
You click here to kill everybody. And I think I can say with great confidence that there's nobody on earth that knows more about cybersecurity than Bruce. Has a well-deserved reputation for that. So with that preamble, go ahead, Bruce, and take the show.
Hey there. Good morning to you all. Apologies for not being there in person. So I want to talk about trust and artificial intelligence. So I trusted a lot this morning. I live in Boston and I flew to New York. I trusted my phone to wake me on time. I trusted Uber to arrange a taxi and the driver to get me to the airport. Trusted thousands of other drivers on the road not to ram my car. The airport, I trusted ticket agents and maintenance engineers and everyone else who keeps the airline operating. The pilot of the plane I flew. I know thousands of other people at the airport, all of whom could have jumped up and attacked me. People who served my breakfast and the entire food supply chain, any of which could have poisoned me. Landed in New York, I trusted thousands more people at the airport, on the road, in this building, and that was all before 10 a.m. So trust is essential for human society. We as a species are trusting. Okay? You think about us in a room, looking at the room there, you're all sitting there, maybe some of you as strangers, confident that nobody's going to jump up and attack each other. I mean, you laugh, but if we were a room full of chimpanzees, that would be impossible. We trust many of thousands of times a day. Society can't function without it, and that we don't think about it is really a measure of how well it all works. All right, so in this talk, I want to make several arguments. One, that there are two different kinds of trust, interpersonal trust and social trust, and that we regularly confuse them. Two, that confusion will increase with artificial intelligence. We're going to make a fundamental category error. We will think of AIs as friends when they're really just services. Three, that the corporations controlling AI systems will take advantage of that error to take advantage of us, right? They will not be trustworthy. And four, there's a role for government to create trust in our society. And therefore, it's their role to create an environment of trustworthy AI. If we're going to be using AI for things that are important, we need trustworthy AI, and that means regulation. Not regulating AI, but regulating the organizations that control and use the AI. All right, so let's just take this a lot slower. So trust is a complicated concept, and the word is overloaded with many meanings. There's a personal and intimate trust. When we say we trust a friend, it's less about their actions and more about them as a person. General reliance that they will behave in a trustworthy manner. We trust their intentions and know those intentions will inform their actions. So we're going to call that interpersonal trust. There's also the less intimate, less personal trust. We might not know someone personally or know the motivations, we can trust their behavior. This is really more about reliability and predictability. We'll call it social trust.
This is the ability to trust strangers. So interpersonal trust and social trust are both essential in society today, right? And this is kind of how it works. We have mechanisms to induce people to behave in a trustworthy manner, both interpersonally and socially. This, in turn, allows others to be trusting, which enables trust that keeps society functioning. And the system isn't perfect. There are always going to be untrustworthy people, but most of us being trustworthy most of the time is good enough. So I wrote about this about a decade ago in a book called Liars and Outliers. And I wrote about 4 systems for enabling trust: our innate morals, concern about reputation, the laws we live under, and security technologies that constrain our behavior. And I wrote that the first 2 are more informal than the last 2, but that the last 2 scale better and allow for this societal trust, right? Enabling cooperation among strangers. What I didn't appreciate when I wrote this is how different the first and the last 2 are. Morals and reputation are person to person, based on human connection, mutual vulnerability, respect, integrity, generosity, right? They underpin interpersonal trust. Laws and security technology are systems of trust that force us to act trustworthy, and they're the basis for social trust. Right? So taxi driver used to be one of the country's most dangerous professions, and Uber changed that. Right? I didn't know my Uber driver, but the rules and the technology let us both be confident that neither of us will cheat or attack each other. Right? We're both under constant surveillance, and we are competing for star rankings. And lots of people write about the difference between living in a high trust and low trust society, and how reliability and predictability make everything easier. And that literature is important, but for this talk, the critical point is that social trust scales better. Right? You used to need a personal relationship with a banker to get a loan, and now it's done algorithmically, and you have many more options to choose from. So social trust scales better, but embeds all sorts of biases and prejudice. And that's because in order to scale, social trust has to be structured, right? System-oriented, rule-oriented, and that's where the bias gets embedded. But that scale is vital. In today's society, we regularly trust or not governments, corporations, brands, organizations, groups. Like, it's not really that I trusted the pilot that flew my airplane this morning, but I instead trust Delta Airlines that can put well-trained and well-rested pilots in cockpits on schedule. I didn't really trust the cooks and the waitstaff at the restaurant, more the system of health codes they work under. And I couldn't even tell you the banking system I trusted when I used the ATM machine this morning. Right? Again, this confidence is no more than reliability and predictability. Right? So think of that restaurant again. Imagine it's a fast food restaurant employing teenagers. Right? The food is almost certainly safe, probably actually safer than high-end restaurants because of the corporate systems of reliability and predictability that is guiding every behavior of those teenagers. Or look at the difference this way. You could ask a friend to deliver a package across town, or you can pay the post office to do the same thing. The former is based on interpersonal trust, based on morals and reputation. Right? You know your friend and how reliable they are. The second is a service made possible by social trust. And to the extent that it is a reliable, predictable service, it's primarily based on laws and technologies. Both of those will get your package delivered, but only the second can become the global package delivery systems that becomes FedEx. And because of how large and complex our society has become, we have replaced many of the rituals and behaviors of interpersonal trust with the security mechanisms that enforce reliability and predictability, social trust. But because we use the same word for both, we regularly confuse them. And when we do that, we're making a category error. And we do it all the time with governments, with organizations, with systems of all types, and especially with corporations. Right? We might think of them as friends when they're actually services. Like, corporations are not moral. They are incapable of being on the moral spectrum. Right? And they're owners are kind of as moral as the law and their reputation lets them get away with. So both language and laws make this an easy category error to make. We use the same grammar for people and corporations. We imagine we have a personal relationship with brands. We give corporations the same rights as people. Now, corporations like that we make this category error. And see, I just did it myself, right? Because they profit when we think of them as friends. So they use mascots and spokesmodels. They have social media accounts with personality. They refer to themselves like they're people, but they're not friends, right? They're not capable of having that kind of relationship. And we are about to make the same category error with AI. We're going to think of them as friends when they're not. So a lot has been written about AI's existential risk. Right? The worry is that they will have a goal and they will work to achieve that goal, even if it harms humans in the process. Right? You may have read about the paperclip maximizer, an AI that has been programmed to make as many paperclips as possible and ends up destroying the earth to achieve those ends. It's kind of a weird fear. Science fiction author Ted Chiang writes about this. He says, like, instead of solving all humanity's problems or wandering off proving mathematical theorems that no one understands, the AI single-mindedly pursues the goal of maximizing production. And Chiang's point is that this is every corporation's business plan, and that our fears of AI are basically misplaced fears of capitalism. Another science fiction writer, Charlie Stross, takes us one step further. He calls corporations slow AI. They are profit-maximizing machines, and the most successful ones do whatever they can to achieve that singular goal. And in the near term, AIs will be controlled by corporations, which will use them towards their profit-maximizing goal. Now, this is nothing new. Surveillance is the business model of the internet. Manipulation is the other business model of the internet. Right? That's how the internet works. Companies spy on us as we use their products and services. Data brokers buy that surveillance data, and they sell that information back to other companies who use it to advance their interest at the expense of our own. And we all use these services as if they were our agents working on our behalf, when in fact, they are double agents also secretly working for their corporate owners. We trust them, but they're not trustworthy. They're not friends, they're services. And I think this will be the same with AI, but the results will be much worse for two reasons. The first is that these AI systems will be more relational. We will be conversing with them using natural language. And as such, we will naturally ascribe human-like characteristics to them. Right? Their relational nature makes it easier for those double agents to do their work. Right? So did your chatbot recommend a particular airline or hotel because it's truly the best deal? Or because the AI company got a kickback from those providers? Right? Just like the top Google searches you see. When you ask it to explain a political issue, did it bias that explanation towards the company's position? Or towards the position of whoever gave it the most money? Right? The conversational interface helps hide their agenda. The second reason to be concerned is that these AIs will be more intimate. One of the I think biggest promises of generative AI is a personal digital assistant, right? Acting as your advocate with others, kind of like a butler with you. And this requires an intimacy greater than your search engine, your email provider, your cloud storage system, your phone. Right? You're going to want it with you 24/7, constantly training on everything you do. You'll want to know everything about you so it can most effectively work on your behalf. And it'll help you in many ways, right? It'll notice your moods and know what to suggest. It'll anticipate your needs and work to satisfy them. It'll be your therapist, life coach, relationship counselor. And you will default to thinking of it as a friend. Right? You will speak to it in a natural language, and it'll respond in kind. If it's a robot, it'll look humanoid, or at least like an animal. It will interact with the whole of your existence, just like another person will. And the natural language interface is critical here. We are primed to think of others who speak our language as people, right? And we have sometimes thinking of others who speak a different language that way. We make that category error with obvious non-people, like cartoon characters. We naturally have a theory of mind about any AI we talk with. More technically, we tend to assume that something's implementation is the same as its interface. Right? That is, we assume that things are the same on the inside that they are on the surface. Now, humans are like that, right? We're people through and through. The government, right, is systematic and bureaucratic on in the inside, and you're not going to mistake it for a person when you interact with it. But this is a category error we make with corporations. We sometimes mistake the organization for the spokesperson. But AI has a fully relational interface. It talks like a person, but it has an equally fully systemic implementation, like a corporation, but even more so. The implementation interface are more divergent of anything we have encountered to date by a lot. And you will want to trust it. It'll use your mannerisms and cultural references. It'll have a convincing voice, a confident tone, an authoritative manner. Its personality will be optimized to exactly what you like and respond to. It will act trustworthy, but it will not be trustworthy. We will not know how they are trained. We will not know their secret instructions. We will not know their biases, either accidental or deliberate. We do know that they are built at enormous expense, mostly in secret, by profit-maximizing corporations for their own benefit. And there is no accident that these corporate AIs have a human-like interface. And there's nothing inevitable about that. That is a design choice. It could be designed to be less personal, less human-like, more obviously a service, like a search engine. When you use these chatbots and they type a response character by character, line by line, that's bullshit. They're making that up. That's there, so you think it's thinking in a human way. Right? The companies behind those AIs want you to make this friend service category error. Right? It'll exploit you, mistaking it for your friend, and you might not have any choice but to use it. There's something else we haven't discussed when it comes to trust, and that's power. Sometimes we have no choice but to trust someone or something because they are powerful. We are forced to trust the local police because they're the only law enforcement authority in town. We are forced to trust some corporations because there aren't viable alternatives. Or to be more precise, we have no choice but to entrust ourselves to them. And we're going to be in the same position with AI. We will have no choice but to entrust ourselves through their decision-making in many circumstances. And the friend service confusion will help mask the power differential. Right? We're going to forget how powerful the corporations behind the AI is because it will be fixated on the person we think the AI is. All right, so far, we've been talking about one particular failure that results from overly trusting AI. We can call it something like hidden exploitation. Right? There are others. There's outright fraud, where the AI is actually trying to steal stuff from you. There's the more prosaic mistaken expertise, where the AI acts more knowledgeable than it does. It acts confident about things it doesn't know. There's incompetency, where you believe the AI can do something that it can't. There's inconsistency, where you mistakenly expect the AI to be able to repeat its behaviors. And there's illegality, where you mistakenly trust the AI to obey the law. There are probably actually more ways trusting an AI can fail. I think it's worth thinking about them. But all this is a long-winded way of saying that we need trustworthy AI. AIs whose behavior is understood, whose limitations are understood, whose training is understood, whose biases are understood and corrected for. AI whose goals are understood, right? That won't secretly betray you to somebody else. And the market's not going to provide this on their own. Right? Corporations are those profit maximizers at the expense of society. And the incentives of surveillance capitalism are just too much to resist. It is government who provides the underlying mechanisms for the social trust essential to society. Right? Think about contract law, laws about property, laws protecting your personal safety, or any of the health and safety codes that let me board a plane, eat at a restaurant without worry. The more you can trust that your societal interactions are reliable and predictable, the more you can ignore their details. Right? Places where government does not provide these things are not good places to live. And government needs to do this with AI. We need AI transparency laws. When it's used, how it's trained, what biases it has. We need laws regulating AI and robotic safety, when it is permitted to affect the world. We need laws that enforce trustworthiness of AI, right? Which means the ability to recognize when those laws are being broken, and penalties sufficiently large to incent trustworthy behavior. So a lot of countries are looking at AI safety and security laws. The EU is furthest along, but I think we're making a critical mistake in a lot of them because we're trying to regulate the AI and not the humans behind them. Right? AIs are not people. They don't have agency. They are built by, trained by, and controlled by people, like mostly mostly for-profit corporations. Any AI regulation should place restrictions on those people and those corporations. Otherwise, the regulation is just making the same category error that I've been talking about. Because at the end of the day, there is always a human responsible for whatever the AI's behavior is. And it's the human that needs to be accountable for what they do, for what their companies do, right? Regardless of whether it was due to humans, an AI, or some combination of both. And maybe that won't be true forever, but it'll be true in the near future. If we want trustworthy AI, we need to require trustworthy AI controllers. So this speaks to one thing, public AI models. So these are AI systems built by academia or nonprofit groups or governments themselves that can be owned and run by individuals. I'll hear the term public model thrown out a lot in the AI world, but it's worth detailing what this means. Right? It's not a corporate AI model that the public is free to use. It's not a corporate AI model that the government licenses. It's not even an open source model that people are free to examine and modify. A public model is a model built by the public for the public. Right? It requires political accountability, not just market accountability. It means openness and transparency, but paired with a responsiveness to public demands, and needs to be freely available to anyone to build on top of, which means universal access. Right? So it becomes a foundation for a free market and AI innovation. And this would be a counterbalance to corporate-owned AI. So we are never going to make AI into our friends. Right? AIs are incapable of interpersonal trust. And when I trust a friend, it is not just a bilateral interaction. It's because we both exist in a social system. Right? I am not going to cheat a friend, yes, because they're a friend, but also I don't want the reputation of being a cheater. Right? I know that my interactions are embedded in a much greater social context. I am a body living in a world where my health and safety and well-being matters. And that all informs interpersonal trust. And AI is not going to be that way. Right? There's nothing about murdering an AI that causes an incentive for an AI. But we can make them into trustworthy services. Right? We can make them into our agents and not double agents, but only if the government mandates it. Just like we can put limits on surveillance capitalism, but only if the government mandates it. And it is well in government's power to do this. It's not even, relatively speaking, expensive. But most importantly, it is essential for government to do this. Because the point of government is to create social trust. Right? I started this talk by explaining the importance of trust in society and how interpersonal trust doesn't scale well to larger groups. right? It's that other impersonal kind of trust, social trust, reliability and predictability. That's what governments create. And to the extent that a government improves the overall trust in society, it succeeds. And to the extent that a government doesn't, it fails. And I know this is going to be hard, right? Today's governments have a lot of trouble effectively regulating slow AI, corporations. So why should we expect them to be able to regulate fast AI? But they have to. We need government to constrain the behavior of corporations and the AIs they build, deploy, and control, right, to enforce both predictability and reliability. And that's how we can create the social trust that society needs to thrive in the AI age. So at that, I'm going to stop and take questions and comments.
You want to lead off? Or?
Typically, we let students ask the first question. So, is somebody?
There are a few on Zoom, which I'll get to, but let's do the
Yes.
first.
So would one of you like to ask the first question? Stu, go ahead.
So it's very interesting to me to think about, we're sitting here listening to this and nodding our heads and we agree like, yeah, it's super dangerous. But if we're not here, I mean, if you're just casually interacting with AI like we do with ChatGPT, might not have the same fears. So my question is, how do you communicate the dangers of trusting an AI like a human to people who aren't engaging in this conversation that you're leading with, and just see AI casually, at home or at work or for fun, and don't understand the dangers around it?
Yeah, I think we have to write and speak about it. And that's what I try to do. I mean, this is sort of the half-hour version. I can do the 5-minute version. I can do the 10-minute version. I can do the 1-paragraph version. So we sort of have to do this at all levels. A lot of it is telling the right stories. I mean, the stories of AI are mostly the stories that the corporations are telling. And they're good stories, but they're not complete. So we need to talk about the stories. I mean, this is no different than internet and surveillance. I mean, how do you tell people who don't realize it that their cell phones are spying on everything they do? Maybe sometimes you can't. But I think this is going to be different because AIs are going to affect the world in a direct physical manner in the way your phone does not. Right? AIs are going to be connecting to things. And that real world interface makes the dangers more clear. And so it's driverless cars, it's drones, it's thermostats, it's robots. So the visceral nature makes this more clear, but really it's picking metaphors. I mean, AIs are not, right? They're not the way we portray them in science fiction. And that's the way people think about them. And they're very different. So we need to talk that way.
Thank you very much. My question is, if we don't regulate AI, because like people in the market side say, oh, these systems will fail when they do, and then the market itself, the corporations themselves, they will figure out that they have to fix the issues. So if we don't regulate AI, how do we, like, just very minimally, just in the case of, I don't know, like election fraud, like misinformation for elections, and which people are working on now. If we don't do it, how would you imagine things will unfold, and at what point do you think the social pressure would be enough to make the government do that? Because right now, all the tech companies are lobbying, and unless the public demands regulation, probably the politicians are not going to do it, right?
So I think we have an example of how it goes with that regulation. That's social media. Right? So we see what happens when there are large monopolies controlling social media. We see how it pushes an agenda that benefits the corporation. Right? So it's outrage, which drives traffic, which drives ad revenue. So they, deal with misinformation, but not very well, because it turns out misinformation sells ads. Right? I mean, they handle lock-in, pretty badly because they don't want you to leave. I think social media really gives us the cautionary tale of what AI will look like if it is allowed without government intervention to be run by a few corporations, right? It will exist for the benefit of those corporations. And don't think for a minute that the output of the AI won't be affected by advertisers. And that is going to be how it's going to make money. And just as we saw Facebook over the years become sort of less and less what you want to see and more what the advertisers want you to see. So I think that's where you go to see what it'll look like. I think it'll be worse because of the relational nature, right? Because of that friend service mix-up, which you don't assume Google is your friend. But if you ask the Google chatbot something and it responds like a friend, you're going to start thinking of it that way. And you see this a little bit with some of the AI companions, which I don't really recommend trying, but go to the Reddit group for products like Replica and look at some of the screenshots. It's going to be really interesting when we're going to have these weird social relationships with something that is essentially trying to manipulate you.
So, turn it on. Okay. So I love what you said about the AI butler, possibly even probably being a double agent. I think actually think of your phone already as a double agent. Your car is a double agent. The world, I mean, every new car, every television comes with spying included. Turning it off is very hard. And now Sam Altman is out there talking about raising $7 trillion to continue to develop what they're already developing, which is to their advantage, not to ours. But there are a number of people working now on what they're calling personal AI, and this is part of the self-sovereign identity movement, which is all about putting agency on the individual side. Do you think it's going to be possible for us to have our own, it's a butler, but it has any connection, it would have no connection to any of the large companies, except maybe to tap into an API here or there in order to get data that we need. One that knows all our health, all our finances, all of our appointments, all of the mundanities of everyday life that we really could use help with right now. We have way too much data in our lives. How do we surmount that? AI would be good for that. So do you have any faith that that we can have our own AIs that are like our own, like right now it feels to me like it's 1974, we don't have personal computers yet. All we have are mainframes, you can hardly even think about personal computers. But we will be getting personal AI of some sort. What do you see happening there?
So I do, and that's because I come on a certain side of a technical question we don't know the answer to. So right now, it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to create a foundation AI model, right? And that's all these chips and all the CPU cycles. It is incredibly expensive. I believe that is temporary. We are already seeing homegrown models that are almost as good. We're seeing groups that are taking models and sort of retraining them every day incrementally, and they're smaller and more compact. So I believe that hundreds of millions of dollars to create a model is 2023, 2024. And after that, you're going to do them on your laptop. We have models that can be created, but can run on a phone. And these are some of the open source models. Now, if I'm wrong about that, if it always will require hundreds of millions of dollars to create a model, then no, right? We're going to have to rely on somebody large to create the model. And this is what I want public AI to do, right? To create a public model ground up that isn't built with a profit maximizing system, underneath it. My hope is that in another year, it'll be obviated by technology. Because if we get to a point, right, where anybody can make their own model, then I think we're magically golden. It becomes distributed out of the box. And there will be, there'll be the Linux of AI models, right? Some open source. There'll be governments, there'll be EFF will make their model. Everybody will make a model. And that seems like a really good world to be in. Then there are 5 models, all run by corporations. You can pick which one. By the way, they all use the same training data corpus. I don't know why that happens, but it does. So they're all basically the same. So I'm optimistic, but it really depends on the cost of creating the frontier models. Will it always be expensive or will it become cheap?
We have a question here in the Q&A panel. Let me bring it up. Reza, would you like to say it out loud, or we can read it for you?
Yes, yeah, I can say it out loud. My name's Reza Rasool, chairman of Kwai. Kwai is a non-profit building personal AI. We actually fashion ourselves as the Linux of AI.
I like you already.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we're volunteer-based, open source. The things, Bruce, you're saying, thanks for a very insightful sort of deconstruction of trust. I think this category misconception we have, or confusion between social trust and personal trust, is you're spot on there. What we're trying to do is build personal AI that runs locally, that's trained on your own data. So large language models, you're absolutely right. It'll be foolhardy for a small nonprofit to try and build a large language model. But if we think large language models are just a way of understanding natural language, the model itself does not have the profit maximizing logic, all the sort of evil non-human motives of the corporations. That's in layers of logic above that. We feel, and we've got running in our lab now, large language models, and we can swap them out. We can use the latest that the industry is providing, but we refine it and we RAG it, augment it with your local private data. And it's fantastic. And it's running locally with no network connection needed. And you can simply have a conversation with your historical data. Imagine having a conversation with your 10 years of your Gmail inbox, or having a conversation with the data that you've pulled from your Chase bank account. Most people are doing their taxes now. So it's part of it's the repatriation of your private data, the thing that they spied on you and sucked up into their silos, and they charge you a tax to go and visit your data or query it. Repatriating the data. But you are absolutely right about the now I'm going to turn this into a question. I'm going to say,
because they're always looking at you saying you've been talking a lot.
Are we doomed to failure? I think that's it. Are we doomed to failure? Yeah.
I don't think we are. So first, can you email me after this? Because I'd love to talk to you about what you're doing. And if you listen to Reza, think of how intimate it is. 10 years of your email data, your financial data. Like you actually want your AI to have access to that. Your location data, your health data, all of that. But that's incredibly intimate. And a lot of us give that to corporations now, right? Gmail has most of our email, and whatever healthcare company has it up in the cloud. But imagine that we did have control of it, right? And we got to decide who would see it, and we could use it for our own benefit. It's a different world, but it's one that AI can empower. So when you think about the promise of these systems, I think of them as generative in nature. Like, wouldn't it be great if my personal advocate knew, my dietary data and my location data, and I'm going to make this up, and the data from my fitness tracker, and it could do all these great things. But those are right now siloed. So can we bring it in one place? It's kind of a separate question here. Can we train an AI on it in a way that doesn't let some corporation add all that? Because I might not want that, but I really want the benefit of having it. So one of the things I'm thinking about, and it wasn't in this talk, but I want to mention it, thinking a lot about democracy and how AI will help democracy, that AI will do things like explain political issues to us in ways we can understand, will help us connect with our representatives, will help representatives, sort through constituent comments, help people reach consensus. And all of these things seem very powerful, but I need trustworthy AI to make any of them work. Right? This stuff can get very dicey if someone can put their finger on the scales. And right now, we just don't have that kind of visibility into how they work. And we're going to need it. All right, so someone asking a question about OpenAI's efforts to push AI regulation, if they are in good faith or not. I think largely right now, big tech, and it's OpenAI, it's Facebook, it's Google, it's Apple, Microsoft, they will push regulation as an anti-competitive measure. Right? They know that if at any regulations they push in, they'll be able to meet, and like the startups won't. So they see it anti-competitive. And also they kind of know the US won't do anything. So it can look good to say you're all in favor of regulation, like knowing it'll never happen. So no, I don't think it's in good faith. Not just AI, but big tech regulation in general.
There's a question that Michael Nelson asks. He says that the EU is trying to regulate the tech and the people who develop it, and says instead the bureaucrats should focus on tracking and constraining the people who buy the AI systems and marketing teams and consultants, et cetera. Well, what are your thoughts on sort of the paradigms of policy? Whether it's harm reduction, who should it focus on, et cetera?
So generally, the way we think about security and liabilities is you want the entity who is the best position to mitigate the risk to be in charge of the risk. So in retail goods, it tends to be the end of the supply chain. So you regulate, right, the store that sells you the thing, and then that store will push the regulations back up to the supply chain to the creator, right? And that we like that for IoT devices. We like that for a lot of computer stuff, right? Regulate Walmart, regulate Amazon, and make them regulate their suppliers rather than trying to regulate some export company in China who you have no access to. So that kind of makes a lot of sense. So we had a story like yesterday, someone mentioned it in the chat, that an airline website chat bot gave a person the wrong information. And then the person sued, and the judge said, you're responsible for the chatbot. Yeah, it's not your chatbot, right? You didn't do the tech, tech's opaque to you, but you are responsible for what it does. I say this to my students. I tell them, you're right in your work, you can use generative AI as much as you want in any way you want, but it is your writing. If there's an error, it is your error. If there's plagiarism, it is your plagiarism. Use the tools, but it is your responsibility what the final output is. And that feels like a good paradigm in general.
Michael, did you want, hello? Michael, did you want to comment more on that? He's on mute. Well, Richard brings up another point. He says holding companies accountable for AI equates to making them harm me somewhat less than they otherwise would. What about empowering an ecosystem of actual human agency via the digital agents with elements like AI interoperability and entities operating under fiduciary duties of loyalty? That way we can use that same technology to more directly fight back against the harms of institutional AIs and also promote our best interests.
Those seem like the same things to me. I'm a big fan of fiduciaries, right? The notion that these companies have special access to our data and thereby need special responsibilities to care for it, right? They need to be special trustworthy. So like a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or a priest, the other fiduciary, that this is a special role. I think there should be data fiduciaries, I mean, even aside from AI. So definitely that is a way to think. I mean, we do both, right? We have to empower from the bottom and disempower from the top. You're not going to be able to do one or the other. You're going to have to do both. Because right now, the tech monopolies are really good at converting money into policy that gives them more money. And as long as they control the levers of policy, right, with lobbying, with all the ways money becomes power in this country, we have to defang that. I mean, antitrust is a huge part of this. But certainly, you mean the bottom-up mechanisms are real important as well.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask you
Another question in the room.
So I wrote a long paragraph to ask the question, and thank you very much for the great talk. I just wanted to say I like the point where you made on the social trust, how it scales, and by making us link the trustworthiness of corporations and laws to the people we interact with and the services we get, such as the Uber example you gave. You are working for Uber, I trust Uber, so I trust you kind of feel. And so I interpret trust as a contagious thing as to some degree, and you said so to avoid these companies to make the AI work as the double agents and profit on us, maybe the government has to regulate or enforce laws to ensure the trustworthiness of the AI. But my question is, what about the trustworthiness attached to the government that enforces the laws to the AI? And do you think?
Oh yes, of course. And what we know is you got to trust somebody. Right? There's no system of human anything that doesn't involve trust. But I want to distribute the trust. So I don't see government AI as a replacement corporate AI. I see it as a counterpoint, right? Because that is another center of power that has really been defanged by corporations. So I think it just serves as an addition. But you're right, of course, right? I mean, the government could be untrustworthy. There'll be lots of examples of AI coming from untrustworthy governments. So think of it as a counterpoint, not a replacement. So someone in the comments said, "I refuse to believe that AI will help democracy." So let me try to convince you. I think AI will do an enormous amount of good for democracy. And I'm going to give you some. I'm not going to go through the detail, but I'll give you some examples. Helping people understand political issues, right? AI chatbots that teach, I think will be huge. Providing actual political commentary. I mean, getting away from this dumb horse race commentary that the mainstream press does. AI can actually do that. Acting as a government watchdog, right? AIs can provide summaries of all, right? Pretty much all local government happens in secret because there's no more press to cover those meetings. AI summarization of government meetings would be enormous. Helping people participate in government, right? And that's getting lawmakers read all of their letters and comments and not just measuring heights of piles. Being a personal advocate to the government. AI is actually really good at filling out government forms, which is a huge problem, having people and the services they deserve. AI as moderator, helping groups of people reach consensus, which certainly in local government would be big, but that can propagate up. Finding loopholes in laws, really interesting work, and seeing if AIs can discover loopholes before they're passed. Acting as a lawyer, reducing the cost of getting legal assistance. Acting as an adjudicator. Acting as a law enforcer. What if we put a camera in every abattoir and had the AIs watch for violations? I mean, that would be enormous. I mean, I got more.
Carry on.
The bottom up net. Now, I think power's going to resist this. I mean, I would love to let an AI at all the IRS data. It's going to find the wealthy tax cheats, guaranteed. But, you know, the Republicans underfund the IRS all the time because they don't want the IRS to find tax cheats, right? So this is going to be a hard sell. But AI is taking the place of humans in areas where humans improve democracy will be huge.
But
Giving-
Jamie,
right,
who,
letting-
Jamie,
was
who
my
made the
question.
comment, has made it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie.
Hi. Thank you for responding to me. My response to why I said that I didn't trust, or yes, hi. Also, thank you so much for speaking. I really appreciate it. I really love your work. So I feel grateful to be able to see you, or hear you talk. I guess the reason that I say that is that I'm thinking about the original, era of, the beginnings of when we see social media kind of come up and coming with Arab Spring and people kind of really valorizing social media as this place where we're going to be democratizing the public sphere. This is going to make kind of mountains of change and, look at what's happening with Arab Spring. Let's look at what's happening with the Ignados movements in Spain. And we have slowly seen kind of this illusion or like this utopic dream of social media being this place that's going to create participatory democracy slowly fading away for a myriad of reasons. And I think that I'm having a hard time believing that AI that could create the power to democratize in the way that you're mentioning is possible without the legwork of big tech. And I am concerned that big tech has held us in surveillance capitalism, has held us so much at hostage that there needs to be a diversity of tactics for how we challenge this than just go vote for the right people to make that correct legislation. It has to be that we create a variety of tactics and ways that we mitigate this issue that is that where government regulation is one of many things that we do to try to challenge this issue. But I suppose that if we don't find ways to creatively intervene from grassroots means and not just solely relying on government actors, then I think I have a concern about any technology that doesn't have opportunities for grassroots actors to develop things for the people.
So I agree with everything you said. And that's why I think the problem with big tech is way bigger than AI. I mean, the problem of reining in big tech, and what you point out, when I write about this, think about this, the quick versus the strong. New technology appears, Arab Spring, right? The quick use the social media first, and they have initial advantage. When power gets a hold of it, they have more raw power to magnify, and now it's their advantage. Okay? And every time we have a technology that becomes democratizing, it ends up consolidating a set of new powers. So we're always going back and forth here. I think if we have a chance, we need to do it this way. I mean, I think if we let the powers that entrenched in the previous sort of social media revolution also entrench in the AI revolution, it's going to be much harder to get rid of them. So, antitrust is ground zero for this. I'm gonna go look at the chat, see if there's any other interesting questions in there. Mary wonders if Bruce agrees, but I'm not sure with what. Oh yeah, and whether I think any AI-generated object, result, or system should lose DMCA protection. Section 230 protection. I think Section 230 has been way over-applied. I think it should cover speech, but doesn't necessarily cover curation or it's way broader than it has to be. A lot of good stuff is written about Section 230 reform, and so how to make it work for its original intent without also covering for a lot of corporate malfeasance. So that interesting idea that an AI generated result loses the protection because it's not a person speaking. Right? That makes some sense. It is a for-profit company producing some output for some purpose. So definitely worth thinking about.
Are there any more questions? Are there any more questions Jamie has his hand back up for whatever.
That might be the old hand still up. I don't know. Now, people talking about like Clippy having a human interface. It's really interesting that those human interfaces, I mean, we hated Clippy, right? Because it acted like a person and it was obviously stupid. But these are going to be smarter. They're going to be more relational. They're going to respond to you. I mean, really, go look at the replica screenshots of the conversations. It'll creep you out a little bit, but it's a harbinger of what the future will look like. And it's not a future I want to be controlled by a profit maximizer.
There's one more that I don't know. Let's see, from Ellery. Oh, there's a question here? Okay, great.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey there.
Hi.
Happy birthday, or whatever it is behind you.
Oh, it's Cleo turned 4. Sorry. So I just wanted to ask about the issue of bias. You know, the idea of the barriers to building a model getting a lot lower a few years from now is really exciting. It sort of almost reminds me of that like golden era of the internet where everybody, or that at least there's this idea that everybody could build their own stuff. But if it seems like is everyone going to be building off the same corpus or the same couple of corpuses? And if that's the case, do we need to like super work to get ahead of all the bias that's in that corpus now?
I mean, yes. So I think what happens, right? I think if we have, lots of different AIs, there will be, the biased AI. There would be just like, you can imagine 1,000 social media networks, and there's the Nazi network, and there's the not Nazi network, and and in a sense that's better than one Facebook. It is weird that all of the major foundation models today are trained using the same corpus. Like, why is that true? But it is. And the hope is if we have lots of specialized ones, they will be different. In a sense, the problem with bias is that humans suck. So if it's trained on Twitter, you get the cesspool of Twitter. But it's also, you get the wonderfulness of Twitter. And it's really hard to get one and not the other. We're getting better at it. We are getting better at pre-screening AI inputs to remove bias. We are getting better at post-screening AI outputs to remove bias. And I think those will both improve enormously. I think a lot of the improvements of AI are not going to be in the AI, the stuff around the AI. And those are examples of that. And there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm optimistic that we'll be able, because bias is something we can recognize. If we can recognize it, we should be able to filter it out. But I do think that we want a diversity of models, of model ideas, of training data, of in and out rules. And that will give us just a better ecosystem, even to compare things with each other. Now, I've been, asking different models the same questions and comparing the outputs. It's going to be really interesting. And I think we're going to want to be doing those benchmarks all the time. So yeah, I want to see diversity at all levels.
One last question? You want to go ahead? Last question.
Yeah. By the way, I have my headphones on because it's to help out with like how well the sound is. It's not because I'm not listening. I was wondering about like the question that was just asked. What if what you said earlier about 30 minutes or so ago about like how AI could. Oh, close it.
Sure, it is on. Hold it close.
Yeah, thank you. About how AI could possibly explain politics to us. What if the what if the AI becomes?
You might have to yell.
Yeah, no. I'm just thinking of like how I should pose my question.
And what if AI becomes and then you gotta dropped?
Yeah. What if it's under an oppressive system and it's malinformation that is going out under AI?
Sure, and that's going to happen, right? There's going to be AIs running in all countries, including some oppressive countries, and they'll be used for censorship and surveillance. I mean, the way I think of AI are different areas where computers do what was previously the work of humans. And where that gets interesting is where it changes in speed, scale, scope, and sophistication. Right. So instead of human sensors, which are limited by, humans and how much work we can do, AIs can do it at a much greater scale and scope. So that is, that could be really effective equals really bad. Right. So the AIs, they can do anything. I list the ways AI can make democracy better. I can give you an equal list of ways AI will make a democracy worse. And its question is, who is using it and for what purpose? And that makes this a scary technology because it magnifies everybody. Magnifies the best of us and magnifies the worst of us. And there's really no way to get one without the other. So that's why when I look at regulation, I want to regulate how it's used, who's using it, for what purpose, in what way.
Sure. But what if and this is just me getting into borderline semantics here. This is more of just what if. What if people who are regulating the AI become inherently oppressive towards a group of
Yeah. That's bad. What if people regulating the police become oppressive? What if people regulating slaughterhouses become oppressive? If the regulators are co-opted, we are screwed.
Okay.
And there's no way around that. In all of society. And we do our best here, right? Transparency, oversight, accountability. Lots of places it goes wrong, lots of places it goes right.
So then do you think that AI should be so we can so it's further able to be prevented from becoming oppressive? Do you think AI should be regulated by the United Nations so there's less of a chance of that happening?
So that we historically, UN is not good at regulating anything.
Right.
Right? Regulations happen at national level. And this is a general tech problem. There is no country with the correct regulatory footprint to deal with Facebook. Right? Facebook has more users worldwide than Christianity. Makes it very hard to regulate. And this is one of the ways I think that breaking up big tech is part of the solution here. But yes, these companies are becoming so powerful that they just ignore regulations they don't want to deal with. The US, the EU, and China, it's about it, that will produce regulations that the companies will pay attention to. Even India, they ignore it. India is a pretty big country. So, this is really hard. I don't want to make light of your question. I think it's a really hard one. It is way bigger than AI.
Yeah, no, and that's
right. But AI magnifies it because of the power. AI magnifies people's power. So it magnifies corporate power, government power, individual power, magnifies all of those powers. So the question is, how does the dynamic change when we're all superhuman?
Yeah, so I guess a bigger question that I have for you then, because I'm also very aware of the fact that it's a part of a bigger system. Because I'm an international law student, so it's something that I really care about. So, do you think that AI should be able to be used and controlled by all people and not just the
I don't think you get a choice. I mean, I don't think you get a choice. You can't produce a list of people who can use AI and who can't. I don't think that's going to work. One last question I want to answer before I go is from the chat, and it's about whether the U.S. will have to deal with the EU's AI policy. So if you know, EU is about to pass an AI Act. It's okay. It's not great. It's a first step, and the U.S. is going to have to pay attention to it. The interesting thing about tech regulation is that it affects the world, right? GDPR, the European Data Privacy Law, makes your privacy better, even though you're not European. So the EU AI Act will essentially regulate AI across the planet, because nobody's going to make two AIs, one for Europe, one for everybody else. I mean, you're not going to do that. So, the EU, which I, claim is the regulatory superpower right now, right, is going to be the de facto planetary regulator of AI until someone else comes along. Not great, but at least they are trying.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Bruce. This has been absolutely fantastic.